interesting piece, which is about how do the world review our lockdowns. So here's, I love this. I always Rita, somebody or other. She is, and she looks like an owl. Well, just have a look at this face, and I'll show it to you. That's her looking like an owl, and so let's see what she has to say about. I'm just going to get rid of some of this bit here. Right. Let's see how she looks as. And now she's talking about the fact that because we had these protesters on the weekend, and there was some fighting and some disagreements, to say the least, between the police and the protesters, stupid friggin' protesters, that the world is viewing. Look, I've got some information for Rita, which may come as a surprise to you, but the world don't give a rat's ass about Australia. Most of them can't find us on a map. We're as big as mainland United States, but they still can't find us on a map. And our fellow countrymen, the New Zealanders, they often don't even put on a map. So it's a bit difficult to try and understand why it is that she's making this particular claim now, because I think she's trying to say that that the disputes that are happening in this country are wrong, that we shouldn't be locked down, that all our premiers are crazy. Scott Morrison perhaps is the only person. Scott Morrison's the only person with his head screwed on. Scott Morrison couldn't find his way out of a wet paper bag. But nevertheless, this is Sky News, and we can't expect anything more than the truth. Ho ho. So here she is talking about it.
The rest of the world is increasingly thinking Australia has lost the plot. And frankly, who can blame them? It's some of the most draconian restrictions anywhere in the world right now. And police resorting to pointing guns with so-called pepper ball pellets at protesters in the streets of Melbourne.
Now, I'm not too sure what the pointing of guns were. It's really interesting, doesn't it? It makes us seem like we're like the United States. And we have forgotten the times in the US where in Lafayette Square, they were firing rubber bullets at the protesters to clear them so that Trump could walk across the square over to the church and hold his Bible upside down, which is kind of symbolic of the way he views religion, I think, in that he has no understanding whatsoever, and no morals either, I guess that probably says. But here she is trying to equate us with violence and intimidation, and your bloody protesters shouldn't have been there in the first place. There was a health order stating there's a virus happening, in case they hadn't heard. So just in case you hadn't heard, there is coronavirus running rampant in Melbourne and particularly Sydney, and those particular states, Victoria, New South Wales, respectively, need to make sure that they do whatever they can to limit the spread of the virus. However, this apparently was seen by Sky News as a representation, if you like, of the violence that sits here in Australia, and it's just absolute crap.
Melbourne. This isn't the Australia I know. What has happened to the lucky country? No one.
We are still the lucky country. There are lots of people who would love to live in Australia, and people like these people would object to most of those people coming here because they don't like immigrants, they don't like people that have not got the same sort of colour skin as they have. So therefore, the lucky country refers to white Caucasian people, because there's no doubt that our First Nation people or our Indigenous people have not been part of this lucky country. She goes on to say,
people overseas think we're barking mad. What else can you say about a country where dogs are shot dead in the name of COVID safety?
So I haven't heard this story before. I don't know where it comes from, but I am confused as to what in the hell she's talking about, these dogs. So you've got to pick out a story, though, that highlights, highlights the emotions, as if this is who we are. We are a country where we shoot dogs. Apparently these dogs were to be picked up by people, but they couldn't get there because of the lockdown, I believe, and that the dogs had to be exterminated. Animals are killed every day by the RSPCA and whatever because there just aren't enough people to take them in. So this is not an unusual story, but they're making it out to be something that's not.
Yes, as the Sydney Morning Herald reports, several impounded dogs due to be rescued by shelter have instead been shot dead. Berkshire Council kill the dogs to prevent volunteers at an animal shelter from travelling to pick up the animals.
Terrible.
The rest of the world looks on with disbelief as we rationalise any manner.
I'm sure the rest of the world now is saying, well, do we give a damn? And where is Australia? And do we really care that they're killing unwanted dogs? It's unwanted animals. It is a shame, and I'm not making light of the fact these animals were killed in the way that they were. That's just wrong, and that people couldn't get to them to pick them up. That's wrong too. But it really is this, given what's happening in Afghanistan right at the moment, is this really the topic that the world is focusing on? Dogs that are being killed because their potential owners could not get to them? Is this really where we're at right now? I don't think so.
Of cruelty and craziness. Not letting loved ones visit their dying family members across borders, making people travel further for emergency hospital care so they don't cross a state border. We've grown so used to this insanity.
Now, there she's talking about Wodonga and Albury primarily, which is a rare circumstance because it is two councils that share a border. They're kind of one unit community, and that because of that border, there are restrictions that are in effect for those particular people living on that border. So, and that's basically just one border. The other one, of course, which should be referring to, would be on the Gold Coast, where a border is shared between Tweed Heads and Coolangatta, and she's highlighting the fact that these people are disadvantaged. Now, I'm the first to admit that they are. I've got a son-in-law who lives on the Gold Coast and works and has been working in Byron Bay, and that's not possible now because he's a carpenter and he can't go and do that work now because he can't get across the border. So, look, I appreciate the complications that have arisen through all of this, but it doesn't mean you throw everything out. This is what these people want, that we should toss everything out because it is inconvenient. Yes, it's inconvenient. It's not necessarily wrong, but it is inconvenient. And these people don't seem to get that. With that inconvenience comes some distress. I understand that as well. Mental well-being is a considerable issue for me, particularly as a social worker. So I'm aware of all of those things, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean there is another solution either. And these people, the interesting thing about Sky News and Fox and others is that they never produce a rational, reasonable solution to the problems they highlight.
What seems mad to many around the world has been normalised here. Like a state premier scolding their constituents for watching a sunset.
I'm waiting to see the banner here, world reacts to latest lockdowns. I'm waiting to hear how the world is reacting. This interests me. I'm expecting now to hear a quote or something from a world leader. Perhaps Biden has looked up the map of Australia. Not good what's happening there, even though he perhaps should look at his own country and look down to Florida in particular, which is a disaster. But where's the world's reaction?
There's a whole bunch of people down the Ryback Beach last night who thought the best thing to do was to go and watch the sunset. I'm sure it was a beautiful sunset, but that's not in the spirit or in the letter of these rules.
We even had Dan Andrews telling people not to enjoy yesterday's beautiful sunshine because you could end up in hospital.
Sunday, I think, is going to be quite a nice day. Yep, at home. At home. Otherwise, it'll be lots.
Now, what's this about? Dan Andrews is saying don't go outside because if you're mingling with other people, you're likely to catch the virus. That seems reasonable to me. The fact that it's a nice day, a beautiful sunset, some clowns went out onto the beach to have a look at the sunset, right? Now, they weren't supposed to, not now, right? There will be other sunsets. It won't be the last sunset. So use the opportunity later on. Do what you can to get rid of COVID-19 in that state or bring it down to a minimum, and then they'll open up, or when they get 70 to 80% vaccinations. So, but for Sky News, it's all about the sunset, and it's all about Dan Andrews because they hate him.
It's a Sunday spent in hospital.
The alarmist rhetoric of politicians, activists and some public health bureaucrats, together with the relentless media scaremongering, has...
Because Rita's not a scaremonger, right? The story about the dogs, the story about the protesters and the bit of rioting that took place, she's not a scaremonger. Remember that. She reports the news as it is, factually. No further information is required. She just gives you the facts.
Left the public as scared and hopelessly uninformed about coronavirus in August 2021 as they were in March 2020.
What a load of crap. I don't even believe that she said that. That we're just as uninformed about it now. It's an unfolding event. You know, like, there's lots we still don't know. And as the government discovers that information, they share it with us. Whether it was about blood clots, whether it's about whether we should give it to children or not, what age groups, they're still assessing all of that, right? It's like they somehow expected all the answers to be known at the moment that a vaccine was discovered for this virus. This ignorance, this sense of, this lack of knowledge, this lack of rationality just amazes me, continually amazes me.
As the rest of the world, the advanced world with varying degrees of success, learns to live with the virus, a number of state premiers in Australia are talking about ongoing restrictions, border closures and even lockdowns once we are 80% fully vaccinated. So it was pleasing today to finally have the Prime Minister abandon his lockdown. So we'll have a go at particularly at Labor state premiers, namely Dan Andrews and Palaszczuk. But they don't have a shot necessarily all the time. They try not to. They have occasionally at Gladys and the Berejiklian and the Prime Minister. So here she is. So an opportunity to say, well, we welcome the ScoMo moron response, and here it is. Will only stop when lockdowns work mantra, and speak with clarity and purpose about learning to live with coronavirus once we reach a 70% vaccination rate.
It is always darkest before the dawn, and I think these lockdowns are a demonstration of that. But the dawn is not far away, and we are working towards that dawn, and we are hastening towards the dawn. We should not delay it. We should prepare for it. We should not fear it. We should embrace it, and we should move forward together.
Have no idea what the man's talking about. Embrace what? Not fear what? If you encounter coronavirus, you got plenty to fear, because you might die. For those of us who are vaccinated, we're relatively safe from extreme repercussions or extreme effects of the virus, and we're less likely to die, and we're less likely to be hospitalised. But it doesn't mean you don't fear it, you know, because there are lots of people in the community who are still vulnerable, particularly young children, or children generally, I guess. And there's still the elderly, and there's still those that are unvaccinated. So we need to, I have no idea what Scott Morrison's talking about.
There will be those who will seek to undermine the national plan. There will be those who will seek to undermine confidence.
Here he's talking about McGowan and probably a little bit about Daniel Andrews, because in WA they don't have the virus at all, and everybody runs around without masks. Here in South Australia, we have to wear masks everywhere, but we haven't had a coronavirus infection for weeks. So I'm hoping at some point that will lessen for us. But each state is going to be different. At the moment, New South Wales is isolated because New South Wales and Victoria are isolated because they have so many infections. So the virus is running out of control in New South Wales, and they will become an island because the rest of the states will choose not to have anything to do with them, or will limit contact with anybody that comes from those states, to the point whereby we just won't have any contact at all. I, for one, have a son in Sydney. I won't be able to see him for some time, I think, because he won't be able to get out of the state and I won't be able to get into the state. So there are those issues. I understand all of that, and I understand we will get through this. We will. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know what sort of tunnel ScoMo is looking through, but usually the ScoMo tunnel doesn't have any light in it whatsoever. So maybe he's discovered a new tunnel.
Confidence in it. I think their motives are clear.
Predictably, we already have Western Australian Premier Mark McGowan hitting back at the PM. And of course, the lockdown enthusiasts are already moving the goalposts. Now they want the entire population, including children under 16, vaccinated for our 80% threshold to be met. Here is Labor leader Anthony Albanese.
And we know also that families, mums and dads, are really worried about their kids and are worried about the implications of what plan we...
Of course, when you're stating that you want 80% of the population vaccinated, that means the population. That's from the youngest born today to the eldest, to everybody in between. They are the ones that need to... This is the population. You can't say the population ranges from 18 through to whatever. It is simply... The population is everybody, and it is that 80% that we need to have vaccinated. Perhaps that 20% will be the younger group that can't be vaccinated for whatever reason. They're too young, the vaccine hasn't been approved by the TGA, whatever it is, and that at the end of the day, that group will always remain there. So it will never be 100%, because we'll never get that vaccination right across the board to the youngest of children. But 80%, is that unreasonable? No. And what are the statistics going to tell us? The statistics will eventually tell us whether or not the number of infections are declining, the number of hospitalisations have decreased, and the number of deaths are also on the decline. They are the indicators that will tell us whether we've reached that point where we can open up lockdowns. So I guess that the thing about Reader and Sky News is that in none of that was there anything about the way the world views us. Not a thing. But that was their title. That's what they wanted to present, and they gave us nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just sensational crap in order to spin their narrative about how crappy some of these premiers were and how wonderful ScoMo is and how fantastic they are for being able to declare such. So thanks everybody for watching me. Take care. Look after yourselves. Hey, look, before you go, can I just suggest that you subscribe and perhaps ring the bell, and then it'll notify you whenever we make another feed. Thanks for being with us. Take care of yourself, and of course, above everything else, make sure that you're safe.